Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 164 of the Citrix session. I'm Bill Sutton, your host for today, and with me also from XenTegra is Andy Whiteside. Andy, you want to say hello to the folks?
Hey, Bill. Yeah, excited to be on here. Excited to talk about XenServer. I mean, I truly am excited to talk about XenServer as part of the go-to-market with the Citrix platform. Using a platform as the key term. Hey, while I've got the mic, I'll just do it real quick. XenTegra invest in the Citrix community. I had a conversation with Bill and Jeff this morning about doing some Citrix user meetups all across the country. Just very informal, get people together kind of thing. I think there's a missing void there. But if you're listening to this podcast and you need help with a Citrix project, advisement on buying the product, managed services, and this is where I get really serious on the support side. If you're a Citrix customer, and specifically a XenTegra customer, but not limited to, if you don't have one of our minimum support contracts so that you have someone 24/7 you can pick up the phone and call because you need help and you want somebody who's a subject matter expert and people you get to know over time and really build a relationship with, shoot us a message. Call me, call Bill, shoot us a LinkedIn message. That's what we do. And we want to make sure people know that that's available to them.
Yeah, thanks, Andy, for sure. And I would add to that, and you may have said this and I just missed it, but we are very key on the community, and as part of that is us helping you as customers and prospects get to conferences. And if you're interested, just go to XenTegra.com/events, or is there's another website for that in there, Andy?
Well, it's XenTegra.com/conference. It's my, sorry, go ahead.
No, conferences. That's what the site is. Gotcha.
Yeah, conferences. I am a huge proponent of getting people. We now have the ILTACon, which is the legal IT conference. We have HIMSS. We have EDUCAUSE. We have the IJO conference, which we wrapped up with Citrix a few weeks ago. We've got ServiceNow conference, which we wrapped up a few weeks ago. We've got VMware, which no longer includes in-user compute, right? So there's a lot of opportunity for Citrix and XenTegra and VMware to partner. We got Dreamforce. There's Microsoft Ignite. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you're clearly a Microsoft shop because you've got Citrix, and you can't be a Citrix shop without being a Microsoft shop too. Lots of opportunities for us to invest into you. Therefore, we invest in our partnership with you and our partnership with Citrix and others. It's just something nobody else knows to do, or maybe they know to do, they're just not willing to do. It's just an example where we think we can raise the bar.
Absolutely. And it's XenTegra.com/conference is the website. Go to the site. And if you're interested in going to these conferences, let us know. We'll talk to you and hopefully get you to join us there. In addition to me and Andy this morning, we also have Geremy Myers from Citrix. Geremy, you want to say hello, please?
Yeah, good afternoon, guys. Things are well. I'm glad you did the podcast number, Bill. I was pretty sure it was 162. No. And you're a step ahead of me there. That's usually something we not argue, it's not the right word, but
no, we always have to go searching for it. But I just happened to remember last week was 163, so I did the math and came up with 164. So
But I mean, I guess one of the important things is, are we going to hit, how many weeks are we in? Are we going to hit 200 by the end of the year? We're coming up on a milestone. So to your point, we do these podcasts all the time, and they're very good, and we're getting up there.
I call it content with context.
Right.
That's perfect. That is perfect.
Right. Content with context. So in that regard, today we're going to talk about the following article. It's entitled, it's a blog article on Citrix's blog site entitled Announcing the Inclusion of XenServer 8 in All New Citrix Subscriptions. It's written by our friend Sridhar Mullapudi, who is the GM of the Citrix business unit as part of the Cloud Software Group. I think I got that right, Geremy. So obviously, for those of you who may not know, XenServer has gone through a couple of iterations in terms of names. It was acquired by Citrix a number of years ago. It then became Citrix Hypervisor. Now it's back to XenServer, and it was a separate business unit, and I think technically still is a separate business unit under Cloud Software Group. And it's still available, still being enhanced and developed. And now they're basically enabling it to be available for customers of the main Citrix offerings. Geremy, you want to go in a little bit more detail, at least at a high level, before we get into the weeds here?
Yeah, I mean, so what's interesting about this blog post is historically XenServer, I should say Hypervisor. So we have had a name change. It was XenServer back in the day, then it became rebranded to Hypervisor. With this latest release, maybe we should talk about this too, Bill.
Yeah, we should.
With this latest release, we're actually going to XenServer 8.
Yep.
So there's been a name change here, but I digress. The point is historically, hypervisors and servers been included with
Yep.
CVAD licenses, DaaS licenses, universal licenses. And with this switch to, or this next iteration, XenServer 8, I don't know why they pulled it out of the product and said, hey, it's going to be a separate offering that you can go buy, still focused 100% on Citrix workloads. But man, we got an overwhelming response around customers looking to migrate a lot of their Citrix workloads from other hypervisors, specifically VMware, to XenServer over the last 2 or 3 months, that it has made its way back in as an included offering, which I'm thrilled about because, listen, Bill, Andy, I get this question at least once a day from a customer somewhere looking to put workloads back on XenServer.
Yeah, I've actually had conversations with customers, not just about Citrix workloads, but also about migrating from VMware to XenServer for their data center oriented workloads. Now, obviously, this entitlement I think is probably relative to the Citrix bits, but customers can still use it, right, Geremy, for full data center if they buy the right license.
Well, see, that's the other thing too. So we did do an end of sale of XenServer as a standalone offering as of today's July the 10th or June the 10th, as of a week ago. So you can no longer buy XenServer as a standalone product. If you
Okay.
I think if you own it, you might be able to renew. I'll need to go back and check on that. However, going forward, it will only come as a part of either CPL, the Citrix Private Cloud,
Yeah.
the Universal Hybrid Multi-Cloud, or the Citrix Platform license, and you'll get essentially all you can eat with that license. But to answer your question, yeah, it's intended and only supported for Citrix workloads.
Oh, okay.
Which makes sense, right? Because Citrix, they're not in the business of being on a hypervisor platform for all workloads, or specifically an HCI platform. You got things like Nutanix AHV that works great for that. But if a customer is literally looking for a supported, and I'll underscore the word supported, cost-effective way to run Citrix workloads, and you're going to use things like PVS to deliver the disk, the virtual disk anyway, it's a phenomenal solution and has been for years and years and years.
Okay, so yes, absolutely. I've used it. I remember when Citrix acquired it, I took a month or so for me to get my hands on it, and I actually converted my personal lab, my home lab, 2 little nooks sitting next to me. I converted them over to XenServer 8 before this entitlement came through, and it's working swimmingly. So it's a great platform for Citrix workloads for sure. Really, really happy to see this.
But Bill,
Yeah.
I would add that if you're going to do this, make sure you talk to a partner like us.
Yes.
And that you have some type of Citrix support agreement with Citrix, yes, but with a partner like us as well, because you will find limitations to supporting XenServer, not because it doesn't work, but because one of two things: you've put it in a position where it's hard to support it. You've attached it to storage that may not be willing to give you support statements, or two, there's just limited amount of knowledge out there to be able to help with XenServer scenarios.
Absolutely. So in the blog article, I've got a section here. We've covered the first couple of sections that says how to get XenServer licenses, 3 scenarios. So the first one is customers who are on prior Citrix offerings. Geremy, you want to talk about that real quick, please?
Yeah. So, you know what? Let me start with the middle column. So,
okay, that's fine.
So as of June 3rd, if you buy Citrix Private Cloud, Universal Hybrid Multi-Cloud, Citrix Platform license, you will have an entitlement that shows up in your My Citrix portal for XenServer. In fact, you'll see a license file or a license entitlement to 10,000 sockets. Like anything else in life at Citrix, you could carve that up however you need to. So allocate it however you want. But moving forward, anything you do going forward, you purchase now, you purchase in the future, it will show up in your licensing portal. I'll point that out because prior to June 3rd, it wasn't necessarily included, as a part of that license entitlement. So there's a process that you'll need to follow to reach out to your sales team. They can put in a request and actually get that license file created and put into your licensing portal. The same thing goes for if you have not renewed yet, or if you had not purchased new licenses yet. Again, you can reach out to your sales team And for a future order, or I guess for a future renewal, they'll put the request in, you'll get a license issued to you. It'll co-term with whenever your next renewal is. But the point is, there are a couple of different ways to get it, depending if you've already purchased or if you're about to. That being said, it is included as an entitlement. Just check with your sales team for the best way to get it. In fact, best case scenario, you purchased in the
Jeremy,
last week and it just shows up. Yep.
you should not reach out to your sales team. You should reach out to your partner who's advising you on how to do this, especially when you start thinking about adding stuff like XenServer to the mix.
And that's a great point. So there's one thing I should point out. So you hit on something earlier, Andy, that I think is pretty important. Whenever you go to download this license file, it will ask you a quick survey. And it's one of the things that the XenServer promotion asks as well, is of course they want to ensure you're using this for Citrix workloads. Listen, there's no one Citrix is going to stop you for using it outside of Citrix workloads, but just supportability is the big thing. So when you go to download your license file, there's a survey you fill out. It's like 1 or 2 questions that ask you, what are you using this for? And just to make sure you understand that if you're using this outside of the Citrix footprint, you're probably not going to be supported from Citrix for those workloads, which, to your point, Andy, it makes sense to really think through this motion, with a trusted partner, someone you can talk through. XenTegra, it's in the name. Yeah. They've been doing not only XenApp, XenDesktop, but XenServer, ever since.
I run into very mature shops all the time running Citrix XenServer. And Jeremy, the reason they're doing it, they've got one guy yep. only that can support this thing. My very coarse, curse way to say this is coarse way to say this. Do not run XenServer on your own. Have a partner that knows your environment, because if you lose that one guy that knows and loves XenServer, you're in a world of hurt. I'll say something. Let's see if Jeremy agrees and Bill agrees. If I had a choice, I'm going to put you on Nutanix AHV with AOS running a hyper-converged solution all day, every day. But if it's just not in the budget for running Citrix on Nutanix, then let's talk about doing it on XenServer. But let's make sure we know what we're getting ourselves into.
And I completely agree. So when we think through a data center strategy, I think XenServer can play an important part, but you're not going to replace your data center with XenServer. And I think Nutanix is where I see a lot of folks going right now. Not only within the data center, but they're looking to extend it out to the cloud. But the point is, you need someone to help manage and really sort of think through that data center platform that you need to deploy. So that's an excellent point, Andy.
Which for me also includes talking to your storage vendor of choice to figure out where they're at with XenServer. You may have to search really hard to find them to make a comprehensive statement about supporting it, which might not be a big deal, especially if we can leverage provisioning server and Intellicache and maybe some onboard SSDs, as well as what are the I can't believe I'm drawing a blank here. The high speed storage solution of the
NVMe's.
NVMe plus SSD. Take those 2 things with some caching and maybe PVS, and you've got a really capable high performance solution these days.
Yeah, and I would completely agree with what you said earlier, Andy, around putting things on Nutanix AHV. Again, it really comes back to what the customer's data center strategy is, and if the budget's there and it makes sense to be on a single holistic environment for both your modern data center workloads as well as your VDI workload, running Citrix on XenServer obviously would play into it if you had budget concerns or various other reasons. But again, to your point, hardware support is critical. One of the other things that we run into with XenServer is a lot of customers use it for Citrix workloads and it works really well. But there's not that many vendors. There may be a couple of vendors out there that actually do, full backups like you see in other data center environments of the XenServer environment. So obviously, components of your VDI environment can be rebuilt pretty quickly in many cases, but you don't want to end up there. So you want to be able to back up those workloads, to be able to restore them easily. And there are some products that will do that with XenServer, but there's certainly a lot more that'll do it with something like Nutanix if you can afford it.
It's a phenomenal solution that can be very much supported and simplified if you allow reason and common sense to come into play.
Yes, that's a real quick, succinct way of putting it. Absolutely.
And when you think about it, though, like a lot of those solutions that you might integrate into a hypervisor platform for like general purpose data center use, you don't necessarily need for, end user compute running on like a XenServer. So for instance, Bill, you mentioned backups, depending on how you've got your Citrix deployment, actually provisioned, you might not even need a backup.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
if you're using PVS-Accelerator and you're using MCS and Intellicache, a lot of times this is leveraging local storage and it's stateless. So I don't really care so much about backing these pieces up because it's really easy to redeploy. So what am I really backing up? But a lot of these things have become the standard within the data center. Obviously, there's things that you want to leverage and tap into. If you're running databases or domain controllers or just any sort of application data center footprint, right, that you wouldn't necessarily need on the end user compute side. So that's an important point to note. Yeah.
Exactly. So.
Hey, something that hadn't come up yet is what about things like that are needed to support the Citrix environment, like Active Directory and all those things get included as part of the entitlement here to run on XenServer?
I think I'm not going to say the limitation, but I think the scope is probably certainly your VDAs, NetScaler, delivery controller, storefront. Those infrastructure pieces from Citrix as well, but don't think it necessarily includes things like domain controllers, right? So, that's not going to be supported. Could you run it? Sure, but supported? No, not officially.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it indicates here. I clicked over to another article that the no cost promotion is for 10,000 socket licenses. So I would imagine this would cover just about any customer that had a Citrix environment that they wanted to run on XenServer.
Yep, and that is socket, not core. So that's
right.
one thing to be aware of. Yep,
that's a lot of sockets. So
a lot of sockets.
Yep. So this again, the takeaway here is if you purchased hybrid multi-cloud, private cloud, or the platform license, or you have those and purchase them after June, on or after June 3rd, then you have the ability to get the entitlement to XenServer just by connecting with the appropriate XenTegra salesperson who can help guide you through the process. So that's pretty much it. Any other closing thoughts, folks, before we adjourn? Andy?
I'd love to talk about XenServer and the storage options. Geremy, are there any third-party storage vendors, 3-tier that you feel like kind of come to the surface when you start talking about ability to support XenServers?
Man, off the cuff, I don't have anyone that I would particularly recommend. But I know we do have an HCL. In fact, Bill has got that pulled up now. I would
a lot of the Dell stuff, obviously.
I would consult that first for sure.
Yeah, the major players are in here for sure.
Bill, is Pure Storage on there at all?
I'm sure it is.
To me, guys, that's the easiest one. You might already have it in your data center. It's super easy to manage. Yep. There you go. Handful of Pure Storage devices. And when you talk about 3-tier, that might be a really good fit for this. And the ability to call that vendor and tell them you're running XenServer and them not to hang the phone up on you is extremely valuable.
And there was a time where that was the case, right, Andy? Back in the early days, that it was the hardware compatibility list for XenServer was pretty thin, and it's grown a lot since then. And but it's not as popular in the market, so you may find some newer technologies that may not be on here. But a lot of the existing ones who have developed their products, like Pure and Dell and Hitachi, NetApp, et cetera, they've continued to support XenServer because a lot of customers are running it, and many of them are doing Citrix workloads for sure.
Bill, I'm gonna challenge something you just said. A lot of customers, no. Enough to make it significant, yes. And more importantly, maybe a few key customers, big customers that see and that's where I see it a lot of times where you have big customers that they see massive cost savings running XenServer versus one of the other hypervisors, especially now with the new world of VMware really going to market, trying to get the most value out of their customer base. It just makes more sense than ever.
Yeah, when I go back to when I joined XenTegra 5.5 years ago, we had some conversations about XenServer, but it really kind of tailed off shortly thereafter. VMware was mostly where we were seeing them, or something like Nutanix. With this Broadcom thing, we're now seeing a lot more interest in XenServer, and I think Citrix is too, which is why they're doing this. I've had several conversations in the past 6 months with customers that are considering XenServer as an option for running Citrix workloads. I would say half a dozen conversations in that regard since the beginning of the year.
Yeah. Hey, before we move away from storage, I want to talk about hyperconverged technologies for XenServer. There really aren't any at this point, are there? Any vSAN solutions out there?
Not that I'm aware of, unless, wasn't there one, didn't you have do something with one, or did they not do XenServer? I forget the name of it now. There was one
No, I think for a time, Nutanix actually supported it,
they did early on.
but that was early on. I haven't seen it in quite some time. And what was there was another one.
So here's the story. The way I can say it is like Citrix went out and actually found a technology that kind of made XenServer hyperconverge, but that's about the time the partnership with Nutanix kicked off, and Citrix kind of backed off of that. And then was it Store Magic I used to work with? They were
That's the
trying
one
to
I'm
build
thinking
something for XenServer, and the truth is it never evolved. But at the same time, that is because if you're using provisioning services and taking advantage of provisioning services appropriately, or if you're using machine creation services appropriately, you don't necessarily need it for just what I'm going to call dumb old desktop workloads.
Right.
Yeah, these guys didn't have it because it was something. StoreMagic didn't eventually do it because it wasn't supportable because of the way the XenServer hypervisor started up. You couldn't guarantee that the vSAN VMs would be there on time.
Oh, I see.
I got you. That makes sense.
I was super excited about trying to make that work back in the day, and then it just fell apart on me.
Oh, okay.
Hey, one more thing to talk about. Azure Stack HCI. Geremy, where is Citrix at? And we can make this a whole nother podcast. I'd love to see a blog on this, but where is Citrix at with the ability to support Azure Stack?
I think it is supported now, actually. So put me on the spot here. So let me look this up real quick. But I do have customers that are exploring it now and considering it. It does require DaaS licensing because again, it's tapping into the Azure API as opposed to Hyper-V vCenter, that sort of thing. But it's been supported for a bit here. Well, talk amongst yourselves while I pull this up.
Yeah, I was under the impression Citrix wasn't supporting it yet, but AVD was supporting it. If Citrix is supporting it, that's a whole another conversation, Bill. We got to add to those presentations we plan to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for our listeners, Azure Stack HCI is an on-premise connection that extends Microsoft Azure, their IaaS offering, into private locations, including partner data center like ours, customer data center, and it enables you to take Azure and extend it, but get the benefits of running local workloads wherever you need to, not necessarily in the public cloud.
Andy, do you know, and I'm going to put you on the spot here and see if you do, you probably do. Does that include multi-session today?
I believe that because it's Azure, it does, but we definitely need Microsoft to give us a true answer to that. I've talked to some guys that are in the know big time over there, and they say it does, but to get an official support statement, well, you're looking at for it right now. I don't know that I've ever heard that officially said.
Okay. Well, we'll look it up or talk to some folks and get back on that. It does say here, supported deployment, Windows 11 multi-session.
Okay, there you go.
With AVD. So I would imagine if Citrix supports it ultimately, if they don't already, then it's going to be able, they're going to be able to leverage Azure Stack HCI. The question though would be how, I guess it would, like Geremy said, it would leverage the framework and the APIs at Azure in the Azure cloud in order to push the images down to Azure Stack HCI. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it looks like Citrix has supported this for at least a year now.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So Bill, and maybe I should have said this in our commercial logo. We're going to be doing these, events where we teach AVD plus Citrix. Azure Stack is already part of that conversation. You need to make sure it's covered as part of the Citrix discussion as well. We'd love to have the opportunity to come on site with our customers or potential customers. Geremy, we'd love to do this as partnership with your sales team and present this overall concept around Microsoft private offerings, as well as AVD, as well as AVD plus Citrix, so people can really understand what it is Citrix brings to that solution set.
Yep, I would completely agree. Yep.
Yeah, so it looks like Geremy said, this has been supported since 2022. It looks like June, and I would imagine that we did a podcast on this this blog rather back in the day. It's just been so long that we probably didn't remember, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, it looks like it is supported.
Yeah, but even back then, MCS was supported as well. So it's a super big deal.
For sure.
All right.
Okay, good. So any other comments, Geremy? Any other final thoughts here?
Um,
Our core article or anything else for that matter?
no, listen. So, I mean, let me double down on, something Andy said. So, when customers come to me and ask me around, running Citrix for their work or running XenServer for the Citrix workloads, one of the first questions I ask is, who's going to manage this, right? And if it is the Citrix team, you probably have a better chance of success than, pushing that to a different team. Now, I know that doesn't always work out just well, but the point is, a lot of folks are going to want to stand this up simply because it's an alternative that has been included with your license and you just want to go do it. But I would take a pause and say, you know what, reach out to XenTegra and have them talk you through it. Now, I think one thing that's very clear here, based on this conversation, is there a lot to consider outside of just the hypervisor. There's storage, there's the integration points that, just to make a thoughtful decision on how you architect this, maybe how you're deploying your apps and desktops today. There's some pieces that you're not leveraging today with your current hypervisor. You might not, that come natively with XenServer that you'll probably want to turn on. I mean, you're going to see some performance improvements simply because you can accelerate MCS, we can accelerate PVS, we can do a lot in RAM that used to require flash storage that maybe you need to consider how you can take advantage of. So, again, before you fire this thing up and turn it on, have a conversation with XenTegra here and let them talk you through the way to optimize it and honestly just make it hum.
Yep. And make sure you got a partner who knows the stack and is able to support it before you get too deep into it. And to be honest, guys, there's only a handful of us out here that would even begin to have this conversation. Everybody else is going to try to throw some big truck full of hardware at it to try to solve the problem. And if that's not your MO, then we can have an open, honest conversation about how you could do it more cost effectively, just as long as we know what the real reasons for doing that are.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Thanks, folks. Appreciate y'all joining today. We'll do it again next week.
Thanks,
Excellent. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Andy.